Good afternoon, fellow Plexers. Today's video is recorded under Ubuntu 24.04, and we're going to answer a couple questions from Joe out of the Plexaholics Facebook group. We'll go to his second question first, which is about the Office Superfan episodes for his library. He'd like to replace them, which is what I've done. I've replaced my regular episodes with a Superfan episodes. Other people don't like the idea of losing those original episodes, and the only real choice is to just keep your Superfan episodes in its own special TV show library. But that will screw up your continue watching if you're trying to watch the series in sequence. Now, I don't care if I've got a Superfan episode, I don't need the original episode at all. So here I am in my Office folder, and I have season 1 through 9 with a specials season, and there's no real way to tell these apart from one another besides their runtime. I can tell because my regular episodes are all 720p H.265 encoded, and if I started one, it'd be about 22 minutes long. The Superfan episodes are all in 1080p, and I think they're about 37 or 38 minutes long. But from Plex's perspective, it's just one TV show, and Plex does not have an addition feature for a TV series library like a movie library does. I imagine you could get really fancy and spend a lot of time by maybe using the extras feature, but I don't know if I'd want to go to that trouble. So if you feel like you can't destroy media for any reason, maybe put the Superfan edition in its own separate TV show library and enjoy it manually. But if you just want the best quality episode and you want to follow along in aired order, just mix them in and don't worry about the old ones. So that's pretty simple on that regard. His main question is kind of upgrading the file structure of his Windows Plex server for his media. So I've got two folders going on, Media Simple and Media PD. PD stands for public domain, which is what this test server is made up of. So under Media-Simple, I just have different movie, music, and TV show libraries all mixed together in kind of this flat structure. And let me explain the naming. If you're going to use Docker containers eventually, Docker is Linux, and under Matt Peterson's advice from Dockerholics, and he's also a long-standing member of this group, I don't use any uppercase lettering or spaces in either my shared media folder name, a Linux folder name, or any of the subfolders within until I get to the Plex media level. So naturally this is named properly, and so is the file. Spaces and uppercase letters. So just to explain that. So this is more of a flat structure, and I currently have a Plex server up. Let me show you what I've got. I know where to go. I have some libraries added. A movie, a 4K library, a documentary movie library, a TV show library, and music. All just simple stuff, public domain media. So, Joe, what I would do is I would get your new structure laid out. Maybe you'll like this idea of using nested structure. So this is a place for future files to land if you're going to use any of those star apps with a trash guide setup. So instead of having multiple movie libraries just hanging out in my main folder, I've created a movie library sort folder. No library points here. Instead, each individual library points to this level. So I went a step further. So what you would do is you would copy your current library folders into your new structure and your new organization of that structure. And you'll see here, this movie main, I've simply changed the name of it to movie-main-new. But it's identical Plex media inside each folder. That's what's important. If you want to keep metadata, this level has to stay the same. So if I back up and I look in the 4K library under the new structure and the 4K library under the old structure, it's identical. That will keep your current metadata, any custom collections, posters, playlists, and all that sort of stuff, and your watch history too. So you literally create your new structure wherever you want it, and then you copy the library folder over, and when it's done copying, you can rename it to anything you want. And again, for overkill, the contents of that folder has to be the same. Okay, so our current library is pointed here. We're going to point the new library to this additional path, let Plex do its thing, and when it's done, we'll remove the original path, and that will keep custom metadata. So to represent custom metadata, I put 3 movies in a manual collection that I named Test Collection. And let's make one more change. Let's change this poster to something unique. We'll just pick the poster that has the website on it to represent custom metadata. So in the library, and you can do it from this view, or you can go into settings to manage libraries. From this view, we edit the library, click the add folder section, and we'll leave this here for now, and we'll browse and add the new path as an additional path. So I'm going into the new structure, into the new sort library, and into the newly renamed library folder that has the same content. I'll click Save Changes. And if you don't use versioning, while this is going on, let me talk about versioning for a second. So versioning would be having 2 movies, let's expand that are the same except they're different resolutions. Plex scans both of these in as one movie, and then from within Plex's menu I can choose to play either version based on resolution and bit rate. A Plex Pass feature is edition tag naming. These are the same movie but slightly different. This is the remastered version, and this will scan in as a separate entry just as this scans in as a separate entry. Where again, the versioning, these are 2 different resolution versions of the same movie. These 2 scan in as one entry. So I have to explain that first, because if you don't have a library full of 2 versions of the same movie, you can simply sort your library by duplicates, and that duplicate number should be the same as your original number of movies. If it's not, maybe your file names weren't up to snuff, and maybe something scanned in as a new movie, and that's kind of easy to find. From the recommended tab, you'll have your recently added movies, so maybe check that before you start, because if you have a new movie on this line, it's probably something that got scanned in improperly, and you can check that by going to the pencil and info and seeing if this name matches up with what your intended file name was supposed to scan as. So it's pretty simple. Plex has finished doing its stuff, and of course it's pointing to both media, so we haven't lost any custom metadata. So now if we go in and edit it again, we can remove that original path and save the changes. And no matter how many times you scan the library, we won't lose metadata. Here's our custom collection, and here's our custom poster that we picked. So it's really that easy. If I was going to do the documentary movie library next, you'll see that once I get inside the folder, the same media is inside it. The same with the music library. Where are we? Let's go into the music library sort folder. And it's the same structure. So let's repeat that process for the remaining libraries. So again, I'll leave this and I'll find the new one. Gotta remember I'm doing the 4K library. Now we'll do the documentary library. There's only one movie in that library. Now we'll do the TV show one. And last, we'll do the music library. And if you have really good compliant folder and file name structure, you really don't have much to worry about. If all your media scans on the first scan, it will duplicate on the first scan doing this process. Okay, then we just wait for every library to be finished. And this is still detecting credits. So if it's detecting credits and end credits, you can kind of either wait or skip ahead. You don't really need to worry because with the right settings in Plex will do that as a scheduled task. But this is a small test server, so it's all finished. But if you want to just make it simple, just let it run its course until it's not having any activity. And if you go into any library, so I have the same 3 TV shows here. And if I sort by episodes, now I can search for duplicates. And that number will match what you started with originally if you want to do this first to jot down the number of episodes or movies in a movie library. And of course, I only have a few artists here. The music library is different. It's just going to detect these as duplicates as the normal display, because that's the way a Plex music library works, because you might have a US version of an album, you might have a Japanese version, you might have a European version or a UK version, and they're the same album just released someplace else, and Plex isn't able to keep track of that, so it just adds it as duplicates. So the music library, you really want to have good embedded metadata, but there's not really a fixed match to use that works that well with this kind of stuff. So a music library set up with MusicBrainz Picard is probably the best advice before you try to relocate a music library. But if you're not already set up that way, maybe start fresh, depending on whether you have collections or not. All right, so let's go back now that it's finished, and we'll adjust every library by removing that original path. So you'll see that everything happened quickly. I mean, you can go in and scan everything again, but basically you're done. And as long as you're happy with the results, you can now go back and delete that original folder structure. I could delete this media simple and I'm done. I've relocated my libraries to Media PD, and all custom metadata move with me. This custom poster move with me, and this custom collection move with me. So Joe, it really is pretty easy, and I really like this nested folder structure. It keeps things neat, and especially if you might add a lot of photos or other videos down the road, you can keep them all together even if there's not Plex libraries pointed at them. So like I could go into the photo libraries and I could create a folder called Plex, and I could have other photos stored in here to keep them all in the same place. And this is especially helpful if you're storing your media on a redundant NAS, you know, with a RAID system of storage and stuff like that. So anyway, Joe, I hope this helps. It's really pretty simple to move them. And then back to the Office Superfan. I just want a continue watching experience. And when it's a Superfan episode that's long, I've got more Office to see with my eyeballs and to enjoy. So happy Plexing, and thanks for watching.